But before we can begin to transform education, if that's our goal, we need to ask why. What's the goal? Where do we want to get? What are we doing? And are we getting to our goals? That's really the fundamental question that we want to ask. Unfortunately, as Neves alluded to, education typically starts with adults' goals. We say we do what we think is good or best for our kids, but what we really mean is what's good or best for us. Is one of the big reasons for school is to keep our kids safe while the rest of us go to work. That's the dark side of school, but sometimes that comes to dominate, and that's really bad for the kids because that's when school starts to resemble this terrible thing called prison. The reason this happens is the way we have typically thought of education, the way we've thought of a lot of things in our society, is top-down. We have leaders who figure out what to do, what's best for the people under them, and then they tell us what to do, and the underlying people do it. Now, top-down is okay for some things, but it has a real problem built in that we have often ignored. And I'll let you look at that problem on the graphic. Top-down is really good for the people at the top. It's not so good for the people who are at the bottom. And in education, those people at the bottom are our students. And in the past, they took that. They said, okay, because someday we'll grow up and we'll be adults too, and that'll be fine, and then we can do it to them. But that's not happening anymore. That's not as useful. So I take the opposite approach, which is to start with the kids. What do they need? What do the students need from education? Are we getting there? I call that bottoms up. And we're seeing bottoms up happen in a lot of our society now. We're seeing it in politics with bloggers. We're seeing it even in the military. If you truly want to educate students today, I believe you can't do education to them. You have to do it with them. And our job, of course, is to balance the top down with the bottoms up. And if anybody is in any kind of an administrative position, all the way down to the teacher being the administrator of a classroom, that's what they need to do. So we have to start asking. We have to start talking with our students about more than just their grades or what their latest project was. Here are 10 things that the students tell me that they want from their education, and this is true around the world, because we got a lot of yeses yesterday when we asked the students. They want to be respected, trusted, and have their opinions valued and count. And as Neves alluded to, we treat our young people terribly. We treat them very much as second-class citizens. We treat them like we used to treat women 100 years ago. We don't listen. We don't care. If you take the world and now turn it on its side, now that we've fixed the problem of men and women, thankfully, half the world is under 25, and half the world is over. Well, the people who are over don't listen to the ones at the bottom, and I hope that's something that's going to change in the 21st century. So they want to be respected and trusted, have their opinions valued and count. They want to follow their own interests and passions. They're not really concerned about our interests and passions, but they certainly have their own, and we'll talk more. They want to create. They want to use the tools of their time, and they know what those tools are. They want to work on group work and projects with other people, especially if we can get the slackers out and not give people credit for work they don't do. They want to express and share their opinions. They want to make decisions and share control. Share, not have, but share control. They want to connect with their peers, not just in their school, not just in their country, around the world, because they already know that they can do that, and they already do that. They want to cooperate and compete, just like they do in their video games. And they want their education not to be just relevant to them, but they want a real education that's going to matter. They want an education, in short, that's going to prepare them for the rest of their lives. And as we just heard, the rest of their lives are changing. That's the problem that we have. It used to be that for students, the future and the past were the same. So if we gave them the same education that their parents got, that would be fine because they were going to live in the same world that their parents did. But now for students, the future will be very, very, very different from the past. Because we heard about this word context, and this is so important, the new context for education. That's what's changed. When people ask you why we need to change, it's the context has changed, and the new context is accelerating change. That's what it is. And there's at least three kinds of change happening in education simultaneously. Changing students. We're talked about digital natives and other things. Students grow up with different experiences. Changing technology, we all know about that. And changing pedagogy. And all of those come together to form what I call the perfect storm of change. Because things are changing so fast, students today need an education that prepares them to follow their own passions, essentially to be themselves and to go as far as they are capable. The change is accelerating. Think about it. It took 50 years for the cell phone, which is 50 years old, believe it or not, the mobile phone, to get to 4 billion users. It took only 1 year for the iPhone to have 1 billion apps downloaded. So this march to the billions, we get to 1 billion people very quickly with technology if it's something they need. If somebody comes out with a better search engine than Google tomorrow, we'll have billions of people switching to that new company. And so the world, especially the world of the young people, is going to evolve much farther and much faster than any of us really dream about. And for lots of us, this change is scary. And it should be. It's change that, to a degree that people have never seen before. As a reaction, most people prefer to walk backwards into the future. It's a posture that may be uncomfortable, but at least it allows us to look at familiar things as long as possible. Now, what happens when you do that, of course, is you get hit by the truck of change. And the danger is that the fear of change often leads us to rush to blindly protect things that we know and value. The fear of change leads us to do what we're doing right, blindly protect what we know and value. But what we really need to do is seek the good in the changes and adapt them to our purpose, which is education. Can we move to the new context of the world? Do we have the courage? We're going to see exponential change. What's interesting is that while we know the slow part and suddenly we have this exponential change, our students only know the exponential change. They were born to this idea of rapid change in ways that we just weren't. And that's one of the things that makes this transition really hard. When you ask the kids how often should we change our teaching style, and we did this last night, well, the older kids say maybe once a year. The younger kids, every day. Every day. And we have to figure out how to do that. It means that we can't use the old stuff. We can't make a set of lesson plans and notes and use them for 20 years, as many of our teachers do today. So my first thought about transforming education, the one I want to leave you with, is that we need to get our students prepared for the context of continuous change. And we need to stay incredibly flexible as we do this. We're going to need to meld the good from the past and the fast-changing future. This is my favorite quote. We need to show reverence for the past, but not live in it. And stay flexible. A lot of our kids say, they come to school and they say, when I come into the building, I have to power down. And they don't mean their devices. They mean their brains. They mean they get to do more powerful stuff outside of school than they do inside of school. And in another sense, our kids already have transformed education. How has that happened? They've learned that when they want to learn about something, they can teach themselves. They can go online. Kid I know wanted to have a pet lizard. He went online and wrote a paper about why that was good, gave it to his parents. But they need our guidance. Now, of course, this was always true. What do all these people have in common? You've heard of some of them. They're all self-taught. You could teach yourself. Some people like John Dewey and other educators thought that was the best way to learn. But we lacked resources to do it in the past. So you had to be a very special person to find that old encyclopedia in the books and spend time in the library and do that. But today, everything a kid needs to learn anything, I guarantee you anything, or the whole medical curriculum is online, that's already on the web. Everything's there. It may not be the best, but it's getting better daily. So why don't we have all our kids learning everything by themselves? Because they're not motivated to do it. If they were, if a kid is motivated, you can't stop them from learning. So that's really, I think, our job as educators. And what's happening is the kids' education is splitting into the unmotivated part and the motivated part. What do we call the unmotivated part often? School. What do we call the motivated part? I call it broadly after school. It's the internet. It's what people, it's robotics clubs. It's what they do. School, we give them the credentials. Great. Those are becoming less and less important, by the way. After school, though, it's what the kids want. It's exciting. They pull it. We don't have to push it on them. So school's job, as I see it, is to motivate the kids. That's why we need the teachers. That's why they're not going to lose their jobs, as many of them are scared to death about. Their job is to turn on the lights. Are our kids attention deficit disorder? A lot of people think so, right? They're giving them Ritalin and other drugs. Here's what the kids say. It's not attention deficit. I'm just not listening. My friend, the teacher, says they're EOE. Engage me or enrage me. And they're not engaged. They're enraged. They climb the walls. They act out. We think something's wrong, but the only thing that's wrong is we haven't engaged them. So how do we do it? How do we turn on the lights for these kids? My sense is the most important way is through their passion. But they have an enormous potential payoff. Every kid has that, and that's what we have to figure out. Now, what I like most about this metaphor is that if the students are rockets, what does that make educators? Rocket scientists. Who knew? So the next time somebody tells you that education is not rocket science, you say, yeah, it's harder. Because physical rockets obey the laws of physics. We don't know what laws kids obey sometimes. But we can ask, if we believe that metaphor, what fuel best motivates today's kids to learn? And that is really clear. That's their passion. That's their passion. And if you ask kids what their passion is, you'll find it's all over the place. You'll find some of them like sports and music, some of them like the environment, history, writing. Great widespread. And that's where their learning should come from. Because that's the basis of all good learning that lasts. Passion, not external discipline. When you learn through your passion, it lasts your whole lifetime. So we're starting to hear about passion-based learning. And I think that's where education needs to go. To teach these students, we need to put people in passion before the classes and the content.